Hi, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. And today we have Arkesh Mishra with us on this new episode of the Rise Up Radio. Arkesh, welcome to the show, and thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Ashish. Good morning. I mean, it's a pleasure, being on your show.
Folks, quick introduction about Akesh. He's serving as the head of people for Walmart US Tech, working on organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and culture transformation for over 12,000 associates across US, India, and Israel. Am I correct, Akesh, in that?
That is correct, Ashish. Yeah.
Awesome. And in his previous experiences, professional experience across people development, and he brings insightful remedies to traditional talent management approaches. So, Akesh, I'm really excited to hearing all about that. But before, can you take us through your journey a little bit? Talk us about your profile. Tell us, all the good work that you've been doing with different organizations in your career so far.
Sure, Ashish. I mean, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. And secondly, with regards to, my journey, while I started off as an engineer, and then as we were talking last week, my first job was actually at a power plant. I was a control and instrumentation engineer. And when I look back almost 2 decades, and I look back to look at now, it almost seems
Yeah.
like completely different worlds, where I started, and the kind of job that I do today. So I started as an engineer, and then I did my MBA from XLRI, specialized in human resources, and that too, in organization design, behavior, and
Hmm.
so on.
Hmm.
After that, I had my first job out of campus was a little unusual, in a sense, like, it was not a pure HR kind of a job.
Hmm.
I joined Gallup, and, over there's a lot of work on data, on, hypothesis building, validation. So my
Yeah.
top clients at the time were actually, hospitality clients, like, the Taj, hotels,
Yeah.
the Indian hotel group, of course. And then, I spent quite some time over there and, learned how to, build hypotheses, validate, and, use data to make decisions.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, I think, that was a really important experience because, that grounded me in terms of, how do you make more informed decisions. My second job, post MBA was with Aon. So over there, I used to lead the org effectiveness practice for, India and South Asia, and that's where I got the opportunity to like build my own practice,
Hmm.
write my own white papers in terms
Yeah.
of how do you scale startups, how do you build a culture within any organizations, work with
Hmm.
multiple clients, transforming their organizations, and my specialty was the tech sector.
Hmm.
Almost 7 years back, like after having spent quite some time in consulting and having like traveled almost like every day of the week for
It's a tough
close
job.
to yeah, yeah, you're right. Almost for close to a decade, I shifted into Walmart.
Hmm.
And what I was, expecting versus, what I experienced was very different and, in a
Hmm.
very positive way.
Yeah.
So my first job was, as the people lead for this team that was, newly set up. It was the talent architecture team back
Hmm.
then. And, we were working a lot in job evaluation and, job description building and all of that. And Walmart is one of those companies, that offers you the opportunity to, solve problems,
Yeah.
very open to ideas.
Yeah.
So that allowed me the opportunity to, scale the team, scaled the team to become a global
Hmm.
COE and org design, org effectiveness. Basically, the playbook that I had on, I implemented that at Walmart.
Right.
So that was my first 3 years at Walmart. I went on to, lead the team globally, worked across multiple interesting
Hmm.
projects. I was leading the body of work, in terms of the merge integration for Walmart US,
Yeah.
.com and stores and so on. It was a very interesting project. I did that for 3 years, and then I wanted to get into the CPO track.
Hmm.
So I moved into another role where I was the strategy programs and chief of staff for the
Yeah.
chief people officer for
Hmm.
tech and corporate functions.
Hmm.
Did that for a year and a half, and then for almost the last 2.5 years, I've in my current role, where I lead the people team for Walmart US Tech and support 12,000 tech associates
Right.
across US, India, and Israel. Now, if you ask me, where do we focus most of our energies on? Ashish, that landscape has changed a lot in the last, 30 months.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's changing every
since
quarter.
it, correct, correct. And now it's changing every quarter. You're absolutely right. So right now, I mean, right before our podcast, I was on a call where we're building this learning plan in terms of, what does the learning plan look like for, upskilling our,
Yeah,
associates from a Gen AI tooling perspective, plus, bringing the right soft skills and
yeah,
so on. And
yeah,
we spoke a lot about
yeah,
soft skills
yeah, yeah.
when you and I chatted. So yeah, so like Gen AI, how do you, bring in that
Yeah.
developer productivity to our
Right,
associates and
right.
so on. So that's a lot of our focus right now.
Cool, awesome. You know what? I think you've seen a lot of transitions in your career, and right now you find yourself at a very pivotal transition as well in terms of in terms of how organizations are evolving, right?
Right,
Especially with
right,
AI coming in, not only as tools and enablers, but also as workers, right? So it's not far. That time is not far when you'll have humans and AI working in tandem together, right? How do you
correct.
see, the organization space or the structure and the design evolving? And what are some of the key challenges that you see right now, which makes organizations not ready for that transition in a smooth manner?
Right. Well, that's a great question, Ashish. So let me, talk about three things. One is you asked about the structure, so let's talk about that first.
Hmm.
Then I'll talk about, how we are seeing the roles evolve.
Yeah.
And thirdly, with regards to the overall change management, how we sort of, stepping
Right.
into and so on.
Right.
And it's a mix of, what I'm seeing in the industry, the
Hmm.
research, plus, what we are also,
Hmm.
doing at
Hmm.
Walmart. Now, from a structure perspective, Ashish, I must say that, we are getting to a point, and that's where also the industry is heading, where we want lesser layers between the executive leadership
Hmm.
and the developers who are developing code.
Hmm.
So if you look at it, that's where the industry is moving, and that's where we have been also moving. We're going to
Hmm.
reduce the number of management layers to
Hmm.
basically bring in speed and innovation
Yeah.
and get developers who are actually doing the work to have more visibility
Right.
to executive leadership and help with faster decision making. So from a structure perspective, Ashish, you would start to see, and you would start to see a lot more effort towards flatter organizations and
Hmm.
managers having larger spans.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, what that means is, managers' ability to
That's
manage
a
large
Pandora's
teams.
box in itself, right?
Correct, correct, correct. And and you guys are sort of building a product towards that. So I'm sure it's a large TAM for you, with these changes. But and that's essentially what's happening from a structure
Right.
perspective. And we
Right.
want to get to a point where we want to start building more horizontal capabilities,
Makes
which we're
sense.
calling as platforms.
Makes
So
sense.
from structure perspective, again, three things will happen. One is flatter structures,
Hmm.
you're building capabilities that are going to be, platform
Hmm.
oriented, serving multiple segments.
Hmm.
And thirdly, we're going to be, are needing managers who have the ability to manage large teams and are
Right.
able to push through innovation and speed. The second one, with regards to how the jobs are shifting, I came across this interesting research by Stanford, researchers
Hmm.
a couple of months back. And this is what is, I was alluding to,
We discussed that. Yeah.
yeah, correct, correct, correct. So this is what I was alluding to yesterday. Sorry, last weekend, when we met. Um, so, Ashish, what we are seeing is the entire spectrum of how AI collaborates with humans. That's going to range from, AI takes over a task and, has complete autonomy in
Yeah.
delivering the task and driving it to completion,
Correct.
to the point, where AI is not involved. And somewhere in the
Right.
middle is where there is a fair amount of collaboration.
Correct.
Now, to answer your question, if you were to ask me where we are putting our efforts, that's
Hmm.
essentially what we're trying to
Hmm.
understand today.
Hmm.
If you were to take our software developers today, we're trying to understand, hey, you know what? We want to understand how these AI tools are going to, automate, augment, or,
Yeah.
collaborate with our, software developers. And the same applies for any job. And
Right.
that's essentially, how jobs
Right.
are going to
Right.
evolve.
Right.
I feel the biggest challenge that, that companies are going to face is you have the universe of tools over here. You have the
Hmm.
universe of tasks that,
Hmm.
an associate does in their everyday, job. How do we make sure that we pick up the right tool for the
Hmm.
right task and they know the use cases where to use it?
Right.
I feel that's where the solve lies.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we're trying to crack that nut. And once I have more, I'm happy to share that, but that's essentially the direction we're moving into.
So that's round two of the podcast then.
Correct, 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 correct. Yeah, I mean, yeah, now you've got a follow up to that, sequel to this one. And the third one, with regards to change management, of course, we are working on both one and two and,
Hmm.
partnering very closely with
Hmm.
leaders, managers, and
Hmm.
associates. And in this environment, and talking to associates and letting them know, how things are moving, evolving and
Yeah.
shifting, we've been very open and clear
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
If you saw LinkedIn over the weekend, Suresh Kumar, who's the CTO for global tech
Hmm.
for Walmart,
Hmm.
he released a vision where we are heading into a future that's agentic in nature.
Yeah, true.
And we're talking about, four super agents. There is
Yeah,
one super agent that's going to help our customers shop, which we're
yeah,
calling as Sparky.
yeah,
And if you're in US, you open our app, you'd actually start to see that agent. You can have conversations with the
right.
agent to shop. The second agent we are building is essentially to help our suppliers, sellers, and advertisers,
Yeah.
help them move with speed.
Hmm.
The third agent we are building is essentially to help our associates,
Hmm.
both in stores and
Yeah,
campus, help them augment and have these agents collaborate with them.
right.
And the fourth agent is basically for our developers. So essentially, these are the four super agents we're building. There are going to be,
Awesome.
Agents couched under them as well. That's
Awesome.
how, we're sort of heading into the future. Yeah.
This is a very nice vision, Akesh. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I'm gonna take a step back, right? Now, this
Sure.
is what's happening on the ground, right? But to be able to enable this, I think when you start looking at organizations and talent development practices, a lot of organizations are still behind the curve when it comes to talent development, right? You see a lot of silos happening in organizations. You have performance management as one pillar, then you have learning and development as another pillar, then you have goals as third pillar, and then OD as maybe like the fourth pillar, and maybe
Correct.
some other pillars also happening in between, where you have some rewards and recognition happening, etc., etc., right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This new paradigm, I don't think it's gonna work. And I think Walmart has been one of the pioneers in terms of bringing all of them together and stitching a paradigm where talent development is not silos, but across an individual's life cycle. And I remember this very interesting conversation. Steve Cadigan, who was the first CHR of LinkedIn, we had him on the show a few months back, and he mentioned, Walmart being the pioneer. So tell me, what are you folks doing that others are not doing in this space? Because I think unless we sort this out, rest everything remains a pipe dream. For me, at least. What's your thought?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great question, Ashish. And, we've been having a lot of conversations on this. Um, I would say, there are three layers to it. One is the
Hmm.
mindset, the second is the systems and structures, the
Hmm.
processes that we
Hmm.
put into place, and third is the enablement.
Hmm.
Now, when you look at the mindset, we are wanting to move to a place, where we have an always on talent mindset.
Yeah.
And at no so actually, if you were to look at the conversations that we have had with leaders,
Hmm.
the leaders, the conversations they have about hypos, about high performing talent,
Yeah.
about key talent, and so on, those conversations don't happen in a particular time of the year only. And
Hmm.
and then it shuts down.
Hmm.
We have those conversations through the year. Leaders,
Absolutely.
correct. Leaders are expected to, own the talent and know them very well, and then, be able to, leverage them in moments of need. And I'll talk more
Right.
about that, when I
Hmm.
get to the second point. So always on talent mindset is, where we start. And
Hmm.
imbibing that with leaders and managers is going to be extremely important. And
Done super,
that's
super
where I
well.
feel,
Yeah.
we've done a good job of that.
Hmm.
Second, I would say is when you look at, the way we've structured our processes,
Hmm.
um, through the year, we have processes that essentially, get leaders to have conversations about their
Okay.
key talent across the year.
Right.
So we've got talent reviews, on a quarterly basis.
Hmm.
Then we've got promotion cycles that happen on a half-yearly basis.
Yeah.
And then there are performance cycles, there is a mid-year check-in and there is
Hmm.
a year-end check-in. Now, these all cycles are interspread, through the year.
Hmm.
And as a result, what happens is one associate, let's say one hyper associate who's doing really well,
Hmm.
that person gets talked about at least 2 to 3 times in a year.
Right.
And the advantage of doing that is A, the recall value of, what the
Is very
associate's
high.
skills,
Right.
capabilities, and, development areas are. How do we
Right.
focus on the development? That increases significantly.
Right.
Second is, there's a lot more visibility to this talent.
Yeah.
Now, what happens to that talent, when they're so visible
Hmm.
is when a role opens up in any other organization, they are able
They
to,
get picked up.
get
Hmm.
correct. They go through a selection process. If it works out, and then they
Yeah.
get, selected in that role. The third point, when I come to enablement, we're not just enabling managers to have the conversations on a regular basis from a talent and as well as a performance perspective. We're also enabling them to, look across and select talent outside of their own teams.
Hmm.
we're encouraging people to say that if you want to grow, growth will not happen only within your own team.
Makes sense.
You've got to get functionally diverse experience to, grow across.
Makes sense.
So I'd say between these three things,
Hmm.
the mindset, the processes that we put into place, and the enablement, I feel, we're doing a good job of connecting the dots across the various processes that we talked about.
That's super solid, Akesh. But do you think that there is an underlying framework, and it might be really obvious to you, but might not be so obvious to a lot of folks out there, that underlying there might be a very solid skill framework that you have for each and
Yeah.
every role and position, and where you have a very clear understanding that performance discussions are not happening in silos, but along with the development areas in terms of mapping with the skills, what needs to be done so that let's take an example, right? Let's say an IC wants to evolve into a team leader in, let's say, 12 to 18 months. The person has a very clear path of understanding in terms of what skills do they need to be able to evolve. I'm sure there is something as a foundation around it.
Right. No, that's a great question, Ashish. So in fact, we put the foundations towards that almost 4 to 5 years back.
Wow. Okay.
So the place, where we started was I had this vision, where I was like, you know what, like if we were to talk about all of the processes that you mentioned, right from hiring to,
Yeah.
learning,
Correct.
promotions, career development, and rewards, all of that needs to come from a common denominator.
Right.
So almost towards the beginning of 2021, that's where, we released the tech competencies and skills.
Hmm.
And those tech competencies and skills were created for all of the job families across levels, across jobs and so on. And those were rooted in the strategy and our ways of working and operating model.
Yeah.
And those, sorry, and those competencies would essentially, capture your case, which is your
Yeah.
knowledge, skills, and abilities. And they had exact tasks in, increasing level of complexity and granularity,
Yeah.
and scale, as we went, from lower levels to higher levels. Now, that has been the common denominator, as
Right.
people have, taken roles across levels or, they look at the learning and so on. And we've built a lot of processes essentially around this model. So to answer your question, yes, the common denominator are the skills and
Is
behaviors that we
yeah.
built out.
Akesh, how much
Yeah.
time did it take you to put everything in place? I'm sure it must have taken a hell lot of time to do that, no?
So I'm going to answer your question in two parts. So when we built that, of course, that was, I
Yeah.
would say, pre-AI
There was no
era.
AI.
Correct, correct, correct. So, pre-AI era and, my team and I, because, that was my bread and butter, when I was in consulting. So I knew that
Yeah.
world. I was very familiar with the world. So, it took us a couple of months to, build it out.
Yeah.
And, we did multiple, user acceptance
Yeah.
testings and,
I'm sure.
focus groups and all of that. Made sure associates, managers, all of them are
Hmm.
comfortable. So it took us like almost 2 to 3 months to finalize that. Ashish, I must say that, with AI coming in, that time is dramatically shrinking because
Yeah.
we just refreshed those competencies. We're about
Yeah.
to release them. And I can tell you that, like using the deep research capability of ChatGPT,
Hmm.
over a weekend, I was able to, rewrite a lot of those
Yeah.
competencies.
I'm sure.
And, and then the team went out and they, validated the
Correct.
competencies and so on.
Correct. Correct.
So I would say, yes, 2 to 3 months before. Now, it's shrunk to like less than a month.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure this is basically also going to be the base where you decide that, okay, if, 10 tasks need to be done by a role, what can, AI take over and
Correct.
what tasks do, humans need to do? And then what skills do you need to be able to get that done as well, right? So I think that's all the refresh that you would have done because you have a larger vision to be able to then start replacing and augmenting human capability with AI capability.
Right. So you're absolutely right. But I would say we'll need to step into the framework that
Right.
you talked about.
Right.
So at this point of time, when you look at it, the the competencies are refreshed to reflect how the work is done today.
Makes sense.
However, to answer your question, what of these tasks and how they, get augmented with AI
Hmm.
and, what AI takes over,
Hmm.
that does require taking this, framework
Hmm.
feeding it into, the model that I was talking to about,
Mhm.
the Stanford researchers, what they
Yeah.
released, the human agency scale.
Yeah. So I
And
want to
then,
talk more about that. So, but I'm going to park that question, but finish your thought and then we'll come back to that. Yeah.
sure, sure. So we'll take the competency model. That's essentially where my team is working on. We're
Hmm.
taking the competency model, we're taking the human agency scale, and then we're taking those tasks and, mapping them out across. And then, we'll add the tools and use cases and all of that. So that is going to be a downstream of the work, but
Yeah.
right now competencies don't reflect that. See, there is the thought process behind also, not having all of this downstream work, hard coded into competencies is because the competencies are hard coded and they feed into a lot of our processes.
Correct.
But the way the job gets done is still going to have a fair degree of variance. So we
True.
want to
True.
provide that flexibility to our developers and
Makes
our
sense.
associates.
And it's going to evolve, right? As AI
Correct,
capability
correct,
increases, it's going to evolve every quarter. So you have to make it at least nimble enough so that every 6 months, if you want to make changes, you are able to make those changes as well.
correct, correct. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's talk about the quadrants, right? The four quadrants that you
Sure.
showed me, and let's tell that to our audience a little bit.
So, so I mean, I can't claim any credit for the research. I can only claim credit for discovering the white
Sharing
paper.
it with the people.
So, Stanford researchers, they ran a research with over 1,500, workers, employees, over the last year or so. And what they've come across is with two things. One is they're talking about if you were to take what workers believe
Hmm,
are the tasks that can be automated by AI
hmm,
versus not,
hmm.
and what experts believe where the tools are available to automate the tasks versus not. So you'll
Yeah,
essentially, run into a two by two.
yeah.
The top quadrant, let's say, if we were to take the overlap of, where the AI experts feel the tools are available and,
Hmm,
the employees feel that, these tasks can be automated by, AI, you essentially get, what they're calling as the green zone.
right.
That's where, you have the most amount of benefit from, using AI tools. There's a lot of acceptance by employees and so on. And one of the reasons why, I mean, even if there is caution around this could lead to some sort of an adverse impact on the job, people are still very open to
Right.
using those tools because it reduces mundane and improves
Right.
their focus on value-added work.
Yeah.
The second interesting quadrant was the orange zone, where
Hmm,
the interest from workers is very high to
hmm,
automate, but tools are not available.
hmm,
That's where, they're calling it the R&D zone, where,
hmm.
you would need to, invest more and get the tools because there's a lot more demand and acceptance from
Yeah. Yeah.
workers. Then there is another zone which they're calling it the red zone, which is where, there are tools available, but people don't want those tasks to be automated.
Hmm.
And then things like, things around, medical professionals and, scheduling and all of
Right.
that, that's coming into that quadrant, which
Right.
seems a little it seems a little interesting to know, where people do not want tasks to be
True.
automated,
True.
which jobs they don't want automated. And, what Stanford researchers are saying is automating those tasks, would lead to resistance from, workers, social
Yeah.
unrest and
Yeah.
so on. And then there is a zone, where there is low interest and, low availability of tools.
Dead
Now,
zone.
yeah, that zone. I mean, and what was a little, funny was, like a lot of Y Combinator companies are actually focusing on that zone.
Okay.
So they probably would need to pivot their products into either
Yeah.
the R&D
Either the
zone or
green
the
or the
green zone.
orange zones. Yeah.
Correct, correct, correct. So that was where they were sort of categorizing both availability of tools and worker
Hmm,
interests.
hmm,
The second piece that they produce and which I was alluding to in my previous response is they created something called as the human agency scale.
hmm,
Now, what human agency scale does is it's a scale from H1 to H5.
hmm,
H1 means that the AI agent has completely taken over the
hmm,
task.
hmm.
There is no involvement of human.
Yeah.
And H5 means that there is absolutely no involvement of AI and the
Yeah.
task is completely
Yeah.
manual. H2 is where the AI takes over the task, completes it, but there is minimal inputs from the humans.
Right.
H3 is where there is a partnership, but either the human or the AI agent can complete the tasks. It
Right.
depends. H4 and H5 is where the human does complete the task with maybe minimal involvement from AI. Now, what is interesting is once they build that scale out,
Hmm,
what I did was I took that scale, I took
hmm,
our some examples of competencies,
hmm.
fed it to ChatGPT, and I said, if you were to take this and
Hmm.
start plotting the activities from H1 to H5,
Yeah.
talk to me about the tools that can be used across H1 to
Yeah.
H5, and what are the use cases that they get used,
Yeah.
talk me through that.
Hmm.
ChatGPT provided a very interesting response, and it built a table out for me. So in H5, it started putting things like, unit test runs and, prod checks and so on, which
Yeah.
is where, it doesn't expect humans to be involved at all.
Right. Right.
And H5 is, things like, your mentoring and, broad level architecture design and so on. So it's very interesting to see, how our jobs are going to evolve and how where we use tools and so on. This
True.
was the first time, we are like I felt so close to, like describing very prescriptively in terms of, how that's going to look like. So yeah, so that's the research.
Awesome, awesome. And you already answered my follow-up question, which was, can you give us some examples? And I think you've already given some examples. Cool. Akesh, now as this happens, right, especially for the engineering workforce, I think one of the critical skills that is going to remain is people skills, right? At the end of the
Yeah, yeah.
day, when you're working with humans, AI cannot replace that, right? What is your take on that? Because I think that becomes very, very critical for any individual success in an organization to collaborate with other human beings, not just with AI.
Right.
What's your take?
You know what, Ashish, the Stanford paper also answers this question.
Oh, they
So,
do?
I'll first allude to that, and then, I'll get to my response. So they say that, like all of those jobs which had large elements of, information processing,
Yeah,
that AI is going to augment significantly.
yeah,
And what's going to happen is all of those aspects of jobs, that require relationship planning, relationship dynamics, communication, and so on, that's going to, become more and more important.
yeah,
So if you were to look at that in analysis and spectrum, so you're absolutely right. Our ability to communicate more clearly, our ability to, build relationships, basically everything that, makes us more and more human, that's going
yeah,
to become increasingly important. Like for example, if you were to look at it would take lesser and lesser time to process information.
yeah.
But the way, we're able to articulate problem statements and be able to, communicate that to the teams that, that
Hmm.
are going to work on it, or even the AI, the way it's going to work on it,
Correct.
that's going to become important. So I would say, let's not look at communication purely from a perspective of being able to communicate with another
Yeah.
human. Let's also look at, communication from a perspective of communicating with the
With
agent.
the AI for it to be able to work properly also.
Yeah, because guess what? English is the hottest programming language out there now, right? So,
That's
and this is
true.
not me. I'm copying a tweet from, Andrish Karpati.
Yeah.
He used to be, the director for AI at Tesla. So, I would say, like our ability to communicate clearly, concisely, be very clear in terms of,
Yeah.
what we think and, be able to talk about, that's going to be important. Second is how do we lead teams, manage teams? That's only going to become increasingly important
Correct.
now. I feel that, for years, given the growth that the tech industry has seen, managers could sort of hide behind numbers and, push,
Right. Right.
more
Hide
bodies
behind
at
the tech
work to,
skills and analytical skills more and more, right? Because that's where your
correct.
progress was measured mostly.
Correct, correct. But now that, there's going to be, more flatter structures, there's going
Right.
to be more focus in terms of, how do you make sure that you're getting more with less? It's going to be more and more important that managers are able to set the right goals, get
True.
feedback on time, be able to motivate teams and so on. So you're right. Soft skills are going to become more and more important. In fact, I don't know if we should even call them soft skills. It
Yeah,
should be called, just
I exactly read a
behavioral
post today,
skills.
and that's exactly was the question, right? Are you still calling them soft skills because they're not soft
Correct,
anymore, right? They're more
correct.
business critical than actually most of the functional
Yeah,
skills out there right now. So I think
yeah.
the analytical piece of it, AI can do or start doing much better than a lot of humans can do, right? It's the
Right,
softer, the emotional, the relationships, the communication is where the key is, which AI won't be able to replace so easily. I think.
correct.
That's why we can create a differentiation for ourselves or not. And and not only for managers, Akesh, I think it's going to become even for individual contributors, as you say,
Absolutely.
right? Hierarchies are becoming flatter and flatter. So, as an individual contributor, even a young professional, if I'm starting out my career, if I'm not able to articulate my thoughts properly to a senior executive, then I'm going to lose, my credibility and my chances of career growth very quickly. In a sense,
You're absolutely right. I mean, that has always been the situation, but now it's going to become more and more important.
correct.
Because now, you're not constrained by information processing, but you're constrained in terms of, how you present the
How do you
information,
present that
what,
information?
correct, how you, talking about the problem statement. Because even the AI, so, I mean, we've got like massive tools at our disposal. Like,
Yeah.
like now with ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, everything. And the point is for us to be very clear in terms of what the problem statement is, to your
Right.
point, and be able to, articulate that and get to the solution is going to become more and more important. That's essentially what prompt engineering is.
That's true. That's true. Awesome.
Yeah,
Rakesh, one final question from my side. We're coming towards the
sure.
end. So, what would be your top three recommendations? And three, because I'm also a consultant, I know three is a magic number. So, what are your top three recommendations for any organization who's just starting with this entire process of looking at talent development in a new lens? And how can they start, thinking with a blank canvas, but still, a five-star model in mind?
Got it. So I would say the first one I would say is everyone should start from a perspective of, thinking about what the future of talent is going to look like.
Hmm.
And the future is not like, 2 years or 5 years out. The future is like in 6 months to a year
Yes,
from
yes.
now. So what does the future of software development look like? What does the future of, like a people partner look like? What does
Yep.
the future of a financial analyst look like?
Right.
So being able to define what that role is going to be super important.
Hmm.
Second is, what's their path to, upskilling their employees to, get to that,
Hmm.
desired level of what the job is going to look like. That's going to be important. Third, to the conversation we have had, Ashish, is if we were to look at the behavioral skills, how do you build those skills?
Right.
Having something at your disposal, just given all the tools that are there, and what you
Hmm.
showed me, with also what Risely is doing,
Hmm.
being able to have a tool, an AI agent, a companion at your disposal, which can constantly keep on upgrading your behavioral
Right.
skills,
Right.
it's going to be important. So it's between these three, define your future of work, define a part to, upskill your workforce. And thirdly, being able to constantly coach them, mentor them, and having using AI tools to do that, it's going to be important. I would say these three things, are important in my mind.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much, Akesh, for coming on the show with us today and sharing your insights. I'm sure the future has a lot of uncertainties, but it also holds a lot of promise in terms of what it can create. So, being the optimist I am, I always look at the glass half full. So, thank you so much for joining us today, and sharing your insights and thoughts with us.
Absolutely, Ashish. I mean, these are great questions. I mean, it's been a pleasure interacting with you. And I totally agree, I'm with you, in terms of being hopeful and very optimistic about the future. And yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure being on your show. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
inviting me.
Thank you so much. All right, folks, there you have it. I'll see you with the next episode or a new episode of the Rise Up Radio. Till then, you folks be safe and take care of yourself. Bye bye.